University of Management in Bulgaria. My name is Christina Mukil and I'm the project coordinator of this project. It's my personal pleasure and delight to be able to welcome all of you here today, online and offline at Royal Temple College. This is the final Dissemination Conference in the FRIENDS project. FRIENDS stands for Furthering International Relations, Capacities and Engagement to nurture campus diversity and to support internationalization at home. So this is a 4-year project, which is about to start to end in less than a month. And we are happy to have here today with us the FRIENDS project partners, a large number of Bhutanese partners who are attending the conference face-to-face at Royal Temple College, as well as we are more than honored to have 2 very renowned guest speakers today with us, Mr. Adrian Leal from the European Commission, and also Professor Belen is going to join us as well. Before we proceed with the conference, I would like to give the floor to our colleagues over there in Bhutan and Royal Temple College to welcome the audience there and also to officially open this conference. Tenzin, over to you. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see me.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everyone. As we are very excited that this conference finally kicked off, we'd like to thank everyone who's joining us from near and far. Almost majority of them are online. We are very privileged to say that His Excellency, the Vice Chancellor of Bhutan, has joined us for this conference. So just to briefly introduce the Vice Chancellor. So Dr. Niru Doji began as a lecturer at Sherabsi College in 1991. From then on, he rose in the ranks to become the head of department of Sherabsi College in 1995, and then assistant principal of Sherabsi College in 1998, then director of College of Science and Technology in 2005, then the CEO of Bhutan Telecom, and then finally the Vice Chancellor of Royal University of Bhutan in 2014. Without further ado, I'd like to invite His Excellency the Vice Chancellor of Bhutan on stage.
Thank you very much, Tenzin, for the introduction, and a very good morning to our colleagues, friends in Europe, and a good afternoon to everyone in this part of the world. It is my great pleasure to attend this conference on globalization and internationalization of higher education as the concluding part of the Erasmus Plus project on furthering international relations, capacities, and intercultural engagement to nurture campus diversity and to support internationalization at home. And this project is briefly known as the FRIENDS project. I extend a very warm welcome to all participants, those who are here physically, as well as those who are attending virtually. From Bhutan, we have 12 higher education institutes participating, along with distinguished guests from the Ministry of Education, the Royal Civil Service Commission, Bhutan Youth Development Fund, and the Cabinet Secretariat. A very special warm welcome to our distinguished international guests and participants from the European Union, The Hague University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands, FRIENDS project lead institution, Varna University of Management in Bulgaria, and all other project partners from Cambodia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, Hungary, Turkey, and Poland. It is indeed my great honor to note that the conference agenda covers a range of pertinent topics, from insights and impacts gained through the Friends Project to the value of internationalization of higher education, to the broader importance of intercultural awareness and competencies in an increasingly globalized world, all of which will create further understanding and collaboration. A lot has changed all over the world since the COVID-19 pandemic hit us, and things are no longer the same, especially in the higher education sector. We need to understand the global scenario as well as the big trends facing higher education and leverage on each other's strengths in order that we all progress and prosper. So what trends do we see coming over the horizon that are going to affect education systems? I would like to mention some of them, mostly as questions to ourselves. First, COVID-19 has exposed the vast wealth gap versus social mobility. We have seen the gap between the richest and the poorest widening. Even in Bhutan, we have noticed that when we were trying to conduct online classes for our students. Such division is one of the biggest challenges for education, and we must all work on how to overcome this challenge. With increasing mobility of people in the form of migration, how are we going to play a bigger role in embracing cultural diversity, identity, and integration, and promote shared values? There is going to be a huge rise in the global middle class, especially in the Asia region, predominantly in India and China. How are we preparing to meet the demand created by this group for quality education? Next, how can we ensure affordable higher education in the midst of funding cuts and pressures by governments? With the digital technology now taking over most aspects of life, including education, and with the small number of hands controlling the industry, how will our system ensure equity, open approach to ideas, and so on? There have been plenty of warnings about machines or artificial intelligence threatening jobs, but our education systems will need to equip our young people with the skills that can be adapted and updated for a changing jobs market. How do we make sure that human qualities such as imagination, a sense of responsibility, and emotional awareness are harnessed alongside the processing power of artificial intelligence? How do we adapt to the permanent online presence of learning and teaching? Demographics are changing rapidly around the world. In many parts of the world, the life expectancy has increased, resulting in an ever-growing aging population. Today, we notice that there are less people than older generations. Jobs are becoming increasingly less predictable. And in the face of all this, how do we, in education systems, gear ourselves to retrain, reskill others through lifelong learning opportunities? This may be in place in some of the developed countries, but for those of us in the developing world, this is a huge challenge. Everyone expects schools and universities to teach values. No doubt, values are very, very important. But in an increasingly polarized world, who decides what values should be put? The digital world has allowed more people to express or voice their opinions, but there is no guarantee that they can access reliable and balanced information or be willing to listen to others. So how do citizens sort facts from fiction? How can we teach the difference between opinion and objective information? What kind of virtues to taught? You would have read that recently in Chandigarh University, they had to close down the university because there was a piece of information which went round and the students were on strike, and this caused a lot of problems. So with information, we need to be very, very careful and teach our young people how to sift facts from fiction. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the big questions that we have to confront with as we move on. We may not have answers for all of these, but it is crucial that together we try to address them. That is why, in my view, globalization and internationalization of higher education is ever so important so that we can create common understanding to solve the problems that the world and humanity are facing. For example, there is no country in the world which is not affected by climate change. And it is rather unfortunate that many vulnerable countries like Bhutan, which do not in fact contribute to this problem, have to bear the brunt of the effects of climate change. Here in Bhutan, we have been engaged in deep introspection and transformation of our education system since we received His Majesty the King's edict for education reform in late 2020. The King stated that the new vision for our education system must encompass the drive to create enlightened citizenship that is as much local as it is translocal. The idea of internationalization fits very well with this vision for our country. We realize that internationalization of higher education can result in many benefits, such as improving the overall quality of education, preparing students for the global world, improving quality of research and development, creating and fostering friendship and partnerships amongst many nations. Bhutan's journey of modern education since the mid-20th century has been a success story. By 1959, Bhutan had 11 primary schools with about 440 students enrolled in them. This has grown to over 1,100 schools in the country with more than 190,000 students enrolled in these educational institutes. Now, if we take our population size of 700,000, nearly 200,000 being in educational institutes, this is more than 1/3 of our population. Enrollment across all tertiary institutions within the country crosses just over 12,000. Tertiary education in Bhutan began in 1983 with the upgradation of Shartse Junior College to an undergraduate degree college. And the college had to be affiliated to the University of New Delhi at that time because we did not have a university in Bhutan. The Royal University of Bhutan was established in 2003 by Royal Charter granted by His Majesty the Fourth King. At present, we have 11 colleges with the RUB, of which 9 are termed as constituent colleges and 2 are affiliated private colleges, RTC being one of the two private colleges. Besides RUB, there are two other universities, the Kisargalpo University of Medical Sciences and the Buddhist University. There is also a School of Law, which is independent, and the Royal Institute of Management. Reforms in the Royal University of Bhutan will focus on improving the quality of higher education and to ensure meaningful graduate outcomes, and to make education current, relevant, and adaptive to the fast-changing world. In doing so, we must revisit our current teaching learning practices to align with 21st century challenges and opportunities and collaborate with others. As I highlighted above, the need for dialogue and discussion in higher education teaching and learning practices is felt now more than ever the world over. Beyond the continuous challenge of ensuring meaningful graduate outcomes, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted education at all levels and stimulated rethinks about numerous core assumptions in educational practice, such as what is essential, what is not, what works well, what does not, challenges and opportunities for student learning independence, and the role of technology, and so on. I welcome the opportunity provided through this conference on globalization and internationalization of higher education for the participants to discuss and share insights and practices on this very important theme for the benefit of all those involved and beyond. My best wishes to all of you for enlightening sessions ahead. Before I close, I would like to put on record our thanks and appreciation to the European Union for funding the project. Through the various Erasmus projects that we have been part of, we have benefited much and been able to build lasting relationships with universities in the region and in Europe. I also thank the partners and stakeholders for your cooperation to make this project a success. Thank you, and Trishitele.
Thank you, Dasho Nido Dorje. Thank you so much for your inspirational speech. You touched upon the matters of climate change, social inclusion, also digital transformation in higher education, all of which represent also key priorities for the Erasmus Plus program. It was very rewarding and interesting for us to also hear about the history of higher education sector in Bhutan. I'm taking the opportunity to, we can see now the audience of our colleagues and partners attending face-to-face at RTC. I'd like to take this opportunity and just mention that we have today here from Bhutan, partners from more than 12 higher education institutions. We also have representatives from the Ministry of Education, the Department of Adult and Higher Education, and on the in the virtual space, like mentioned, we are joined by partners from the project across the world: Philippines, Malaysia, Europe and Asia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia. In Europe, we have Turkey, Hungary, Poland represented, and very importantly, also we have a guest, a very renowned, important guest, guest speaker from the European Commission today. I'm pleased to introduce to you and give the floor to Mr. Adrian Veal. Adrian is a project officer at the European Commission's DG Education and Culture. He's a member of the International Cooperation Unit, and in particular in charge of Region Asia. Adrian, I'm going to give you the floor to introduce yourself, probably even better than I managed. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate your time. We know how busy you are, so thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Christina, and thank you very much, Dasha Nidup Georgi. What a great introduction! What a great scene setter for to put your project in the wider context. This is something we're very conscious of. We're going through a sort of key time when it comes to education. I think worldwide we are looking at what is the role of education, how can we improve that role, and how can we help education recover from the pandemic, but also how can we help education play the role that it surely can in addressing the other challenges that face us, the climate emergency, the rising gulf, if you like, in income and prosperity between different parts of the world, and perhaps most important, what is the role of education in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, which we all need to pursue. So that context has been set. I as Christina said, I work for the International Cooperation Unit in the part of the European Commission that manages our policy and programs for education in particular. And most of the work of our unit in international cooperation is overseeing the way this international dimension of Erasmus Plus works. So the mobility projects, the Erasmus Mundus master degrees and their scholarships, and the capacity building projects for higher education, of which of course you form a part. So one of the reasons I'm really pleased to be here and to learn more about your project and its outcomes is the fact that I think you have taken one of the objectives of Erasmus Plus, which sounds very abstract. The objective of Erasmus Plus is to use internationalization as an objective of institutions and part of individuals' learning process. And this internationalization is crucial if we are to exchange ideas, if we're going to exchange knowledge, exchange good practice, and exchange people to tackle those challenges that we've just heard about. The major challenges facing us, the challenges facing the education sector itself, but also society and economies more widely. And you have sort of taken the bull by the horns by focusing on this very important aspect of the intercultural dimension of this exchange. How does it work? How can you foster it? How can you spread the impact of what is quite limited funding, if you look at it in the global sense? You have funding for mobility, you have funding for cooperation projects, but you are really looking at how can you spread the impact of that? How can students who remain at home benefit from the experience of mobile students, of mobile staff in particular? And how can you embed this sort of internationalization aspect in some of the teaching and learning? So I think it's really important that we see the results of your program. We see what you have done, and I've been snooping around a bit in your website, so I see that you've been very good at making these results visible and sort of digestible, and the most important thing, accessible to a wider range of people, because this is at the core of Erasmus Plus. It's about international partnerships, but it's also about ensuring that a wider body of people can benefit from the outcomes of these projects. So it's good for inclusion in the widest sense. Again, a very abstract term, but I see that you're doing a great job in spreading the reach of your project, and I'm very keen that this has a focus on Europe, Asia, but I think the Europeans can learn a lot from your project. This idea that capacity building projects are somehow transferring expertise from Europe to Asia is a one-sided view of the story. I think that we have a lot to learn from each other, and there's a lot we can learn from your experiences in Asia. So I think that's what I'd like to say about your project. I was actually asked to speak about Erasmus Plus and Asia, which is obviously the context in which your project is taking place. What I've chosen to do is give a little picture of what the opportunities are under Erasmus Plus. You're already benefiting from opportunities under, if you like, the previous phase of the program. So let's have a little look at what is available as an opportunity in the new program. We're still calling it new, but it's 2021 to 2027. But then I'd also like to say a little about what is the agenda in Europe, because as we've said, in both regions, in Asia and in Europe, and everywhere, in fact, we are looking very closely at some very crucial issues for the future of education. And I'd like to say a little bit about what the European agenda is for that, because I hope, and what the Vice Chancellor was saying, I hope that the relationship that has been created and cemented by this project will remain, and I see that this exchange of practice between Europe and Asia can continue through your project and other projects. So there will be an opportunity to learn more about what is happening in Asia, what is happening in Europe in the future. So Okay, I think this is the right way to do it. It always seems to be. No, I'm showing the wrong one there, I think. I want to share the other screen. Sorry, it seems to be different in each program. Sorry. Okay, I think. Are you seeing a presentation now? Sorry to have to ask you this question. It's not very professional.
Yes, we can see your presentation. Now it's a full screen.
Okay, good. Sorry for that little hiatus. It just shows I'm useless at multitasking. Okay, so you know what the objectives of Erasmus Plus are in these fields. Education, particularly for Asia, it's focused all on education, really. And it funds projects like your own. It funds mobility scholarships, and it has a growing international dimension. It's not just about European cooperation, as you know. And this element of partnership remains in the current program. So almost every Erasmus Plus project is based on this sort of partnership between what we call program countries, or well, actually, what we don't call program countries, we call them member states and associated third countries. So the blue countries, which are represented in your project, Bulgaria, Poland, Turkey, Hungary, and other partner countries worldwide, which basically means the rest of the world. So that element of partnership forms part of the structure of Erasmus Plus projects. And as far as Asia is concerned, the focus is on higher education. So it's these mobility partnerships, so universities agreeing to exchange students, staff, both directions, in the model of the classic Erasmus that we have had in Europe for 35 years now. And this exists between European countries and all the countries involved in the Friends project. Then we have Erasmus Mundus joint master programs. There are currently, I think, about 160 of these joint master programs, usually 2-year programs, offered by a consortium of universities. The EU funds the operations of these programs, but the main funding from the EU is for scholarships to attend these programs. So full scholarships, open to students from around the world, all around the world. So it's outside Europe, but inside Europe as well, to come and study this joint program, where different modules of the program are offered in different countries. So this is one of our flagship actions within Erasmus Plus. It's been around since 2004, and there is great interest and great success among Asian students in applying for places and winning the scholarships that are funded by the EU. And the EU has additional funding for Asia, not only Asia, but in particular Asia, less developed countries in Asia, for their students to receive scholarships. So there's a bit of top up, if you like, of those scholarships for the Asia region, which is good for you to know. Then, of course, capacity building for higher education remains in the program. It was there in 2014 as well. Those of you who may have a good memory may know that there was a predecessor of capacity building focused on Asia called Asia Link. And this was around from about 2004 till about 2009. And then it sort of disappeared and it has returned in the Erasmus Plus program. So partnerships like your own, a partnership from Europe on the one side and Asia or Africa or Latin America on the other. What has changed slightly in the new program is that we have added a new strand. So we now have 3 types of projects. There was always an option to have what we called structural projects. And these structural projects were aimed more at policy development. So it involved universities, it involved administrations as well, to try and have an impact or to pave the way to policy reform. So these could look at questions like qualifications frameworks or student-centered learning, more a sort of joint approach where universities would be involved, but there would also be some ownership from national administrations to consider and perhaps implement changes to policy. These remain in the new program, but they're called Strand 3. The reason I'm explaining this is because we will be launching the second call for proposals for capacity building in the current program very shortly, in the next 3 weeks or so. So we have the Strand 3 projects for higher education, but we also have Strand 1 and 2. And Strand 1 and 2 are subgroups of the other type of project, which, like yours, which was a joint project. Basically, we split that because we want people to have the opportunity to have more modest projects, which can bring in newcomers, perhaps regions that are underrepresented, institutions which haven't taken part in Erasmus Plus before, or which are doing things to reach out to new target groups, for example. That's what we call Strand 1. They're mainly aimed at inclusion. So newcomers to the program can apply for these projects, which have a smaller budget because they are aimed at being a bit more flexible and bringing in newcomers as a first step into the program. Strand 2 is the classic innovative joint project that is the focus of most interest, in fact. So we have Strands 1, 2, and 3. Sorry that I didn't have that on the slide. And the fourth aspect is Jean Monnet. These are programs to support the teaching of studies in EU integration. This sounds like a very niche area, but it's a way also of giving greater visibility to EU policy, if you like. So it can be about EU trade law or veterinary regulations. They're designed to teach how the EU is using policy in a particular area. They can also be about regional integration. So EU studies or regional studies can be part of Jean Monnet activities. Well, this chart shows you a little bit what the regional balance of Erasmus Plus is. So we receive funding from what's called EU's external instruments. So this is linked very closely to the role of capacity building projects. The projects are aimed to have a real impact on our partners in the partner countries. And that is because the funding that is used for these projects actually comes from the EU's external relations budget. It's cooperation money, essentially. So that money needs to be spent on our partner countries, primarily, so that the impact is on those countries and their development. So it's a Euro-Asian partnership, but the benefits are clearly meant to be for the Asian side. Now, this budget is assigned to Erasmus Plus according to the EU's overall policy aims. And you will, well, I don't know if you can see that, but in the pie chart, you'll see 4 pretty big slices. 3 of those are in the EU's neighborhood region. So this, for the EU, this remains the priority region. So it's the Western Balkans, countries like Albania, Montenegro, etc. It's what we call now Neighborhood East. So these are the countries to the EU's east, Ukraine, Georgia, Azerbaijan, etc. The South Mediterranean is the countries of Northern Africa and the Eastern Mediterranean, so going around from Lebanon all the way around to Morocco. And Sub-Saharan Africa is the biggest slice in that pie. This is a bit of a shift in policy priorities. And more than a quarter of the budget is going to Africa. Now, this is a big change. And the reason I'm saying this is because the fact that the African slice has expanded means that the Asian slice has actually contracted a little bit. There's less cake left, and Asia now receives about 12% of the budget. This means, and I'm being open with you, that these opportunities remain for Asia, but actually they are about 3/4 of the size that they were in the previous program. So Asia still remains a priority. It's still a big chunk of the cake, but there is actually less budget, which means more competition, probably. And I just wanted to explain that to let you, well, to manage your expectations as well, I think. So that's a bit about the way Erasmus Plus is channeled to different parts of the world. What I'm not expecting you to digest this chart, but visually what it shows is the size of the budget per region. So you see Asia there. When you see it in this format, you see it's actually, up there quite nicely. But what it also shows is that different regions have a different mix of opportunities. So you may hear in the calls for proposals that there is Erasmus Plus international cooperation in capacity building for vocational education and training, or for virtual exchange. There is, but in Asia, because of this budget constraint, we have chosen to focus on the 4 areas I mentioned before. So in Asia, it's still a focus on higher education. There is no opportunity in vocational or virtual exchange. So that's just to let you know that not only is the size of the budget, but the split of the budget is different between different regions. What I can give you is a little sneak preview. The projects who have been selected this year in 2022 have been informed of the results, and those projects are now starting to draw up their contracts. But the general news is that I can say that we have selected 145 projects this year, and 31 of those are for the Asia region, which amounts to about 21 million euro. And I haven't given a full picture for Asia, but I think these are the 5 countries involved in FRIENDS project. So among those 31 projects, 1 of them involves Bhutan, 4 involve Cambodia, 5 involve Malaysia, 2 Philippines, and 4 Thailand. Those projects, the partners and the coordinators of those projects are being informed about their results. So that's good to see good performance from your countries, and all of them have projects in this year's selection. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to say a little bit about the EU's wider policy landscape. So Erasmus Plus for Asia is one part of what the EU's focus on Asia. The main channel for EU policy in Asia is now the strategy for the Indo-Pacific region. You will see more and more about Indo-Pacific rather than Asia. This is the EU's strategy for strengthening links and connectivity with the Indo-Pacific region. So it's slightly bigger than Asia. It also involves, for example, the eastern coast of Africa. But you will see a lot of references to Indo-Pacific rather than Asia, and to the EU's program called Global Gateway. Now, Global Gateway is a program to forge this connectivity. It's mainly in the sort of classic connectivity areas of energy, transport, digital, but there's also an aspect of people-to-people connectivity. And this is, between you and me, this is a bit of repackaging of what Erasmus Plus is doing. So the sorts of links, individual links, faculty links, institutional links that are created by Erasmus Plus are a sort of soft connectivity that is being showcased under the Global Gateway as well as under Erasmus Plus. There's also a lot of multilateral cooperation or regional through the Asia-Europe meeting, ASEM, which has an education strand, through ASEAN, the EU Share program. I don't know if you know about this, but this is a program to help create a solid framework for intra-ASEAN mobility. So actually a little bit on the Erasmus model within the ASEAN region. That is also funded by the EU. And of course, the EU has bilateral cooperation, particularly with less developed countries in Asia. And there, the focus is very much on green transition, but also on governance and on inclusion. What I'd also give a quick mention to is education forms part of half of the EU's main priorities. So Europe in the world, digital transition, the green transition, these are all big policies being pushed through different programs and different policy areas. And here in Europe, we have set up what we call the European Education Area. And this is a sort of rethink, a blueprint for the way that Europe's member states can work together to tackle these challenges we were talking about before. So inclusion, the role of education, support for teachers, new methods of teaching, the digital transition, the green transition, inclusion, all these aspects that are an issue within education, but also an area where education can play a key role in helping us tackle these issues. And two important aspects I would mention is firstly, the European strategy for universities. So there is a particular role assigned to higher education to help tackle these challenges in the European strategy. I'm not going to go into detail, but that again says, well, what is the role of the university? How can we strengthen its relationship with the community, with the economy? How can we make them better, more agile players, more digital, more green? All these common areas are being addressed through the European strategy for universities. And of course, internationalization is a part of that strategy, not only inside Europe, but also outside Europe. And another pillar of the education area I would mention is this digital transition, which has a digital education action plan. So that is about ensuring human resources are well equipped to face this transition, and networks. I mean, the hard infrastructure within institutions is also geared up to reaping all the benefits of this digital revolution that is awaiting us with the arrival of artificial intelligence, etc. So that's a look at the opportunities for Asia and Erasmus Plus, but I thought it was also important or interesting to look at the overall policy picture as well. So with that, I have to apologize. I would love to stay for the breakout sessions that you have later on, the parallel sessions, because I'm very intrigued for the results. But I will be here for the first part of the meeting until you split into parallel sessions to hear about internationalization at home and the impact of your project. So sorry that I have to go. I don't really want to, but I have another meeting on after that, and I wish you every success with what looks a really interesting program.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you so much for your very informative presentation. I think I speak for everyone when I say that we did learn a lot about actually not the future, but already the presence of the current program, the Erasmus Plus program. You mentioned international credit mobility, capacity building projects, or having a focus in region Asia. I just want to mention that we already have approved funding partnerships projects for international credit mobility within this consortium, and with partners and potential new partners from Bhutan attending the face-to-face event in Bhutan at RTC today. We're also looking forward to new networking opportunities tomorrow in the framework of our brokerage session. You mentioned, of course, we understand everybody, you are very, very busy. Thank you so much for your time once again for your contribution and input to this conference. It's really much appreciated. We are actually, I just want to mention that we are actually being streamed on Facebook. So this session and the follow-up breakout sessions will be not only a live stream, but also available on our Facebook account. And without further ado, because time is pressing us, I'd like to give the floor to Professor Belen, who is here today with us. Professor Belen, I hope you can hear us, you can see us. And he was here just an instant ago. Maybe we've lost him. Oh, you're here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the consortium, on behalf of our audience online, and also at Thimphu College in Bhutan attending this conference today. I have a very short confession to make. I have to tell you that this project, this whole project idea started with your definition of internationalization at home from 2015. So we're absolutely honored to have you here today. I'm happy to give you the floor. I know you're also very busy. Thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm really glad to hear that definitions get used. I hope they will also be challenged. And in this case, I will talk about some of the challenges with internationalization at home that we face in Europe. And I can already tell you that my last slide about those challenges will include confusion about terminology, terminological fog, some people call it. And that is certainly not a new challenge. That has been, well, a consistent trait of internationalization, and therefore also of internationalization at home, internationalization of the curriculum from the beginning. And I'm sometimes wondering whether that terminological confusion will ever end. But what I would like to do before I discuss the challenges is to go back to that definition and share with you some observations and experiences that we have with developing internationalization at home in Europe. So I would like to share some slides with you. And I hope you are able to see them. Yeah, okay. So I am based at The Hague University of Applied Sciences. Well, The Hague is a very peculiar city in the sense that it is the seat of the government, the residence of the royal house, but not the capital, that is Amsterdam. But The Hague is a city full of international learning opportunities because it has many organizations, it has the embassies, etc. So we are in a lucky position that we have all those learning opportunities just around us. And we also have a very diverse population. So nearly half of the population of The Hague is not originally Dutch. And for my university, that is about 35%. And that cultural diversity is very much an aspect of internationalization at home, along with the more international aspects. I have to say that there is still a discussion going on about the difference between internationalization of the curriculum and internationalization at home. But I think we should not spend time on that discussion because they overlap to a very large extent. And they also aim for the same. So you see increasingly that people use the terms interchangeably, sometimes even within the same sentence. And that is not by definition wrong, but it depends on which activities hide behind those terms. Now, if I say European perspective, that is overstating it because there are many European perspectives. And on this little map, you can see the countries where internationalization at home kicked off in the initial stage around 2000. And the concept originated in Sweden, but Finland, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, all were very early adopters of the idea, including the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. The larger countries, France, the French-speaking part of Belgium, were much later to catch on. Germany is now changing. The Czech Republic is changing. So there is still a development going on in Europe with countries that now are starting to develop initiatives for internationalization at home. So it's not an even picture across Europe. In fact, this is also a global story. Here you see some examples of countries where mobility is problematic, for example, South Africa, Australia, or some Latin American countries. And they have, in response to this problematic and low mobility, also embraced internationalization at home or internationalization of the curriculum. In fact, we have currently a big Erasmus Plus project between 5 European and 5 South African universities on building capacity for virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning. And that is one of the instruments within their internationalization at home policies. So we see in Europe and around the world many different initiatives, many different terms, but there is this increasing focus on teaching and learning internationalization in the home curriculum. Well, you just mentioned the definition, so you are definitely familiar with it. If I look at the definition and I compare that to the practice that we encounter in universities, then the purposeful is one problematic element, because the purposeful implies that internationalization at home is present in learning outcomes and assessment, and not just in the activities. That was much more the old definition of internationalization at home, that said any international oriented activity except outgoing mobility. And that was around 2000. So now we've moved on a little bit, and we've included the purposeful aspect, and also the all students perspective. And that is definitely also something that is problematic, because we still see lots of electives that do not reach all students. And they can often be great starters, but at one point, we should ask ourselves if we can upscale those electives to the compulsory curriculum for all students, because only then do we reach the capacity and the aim of internationalization at home. It's maybe a little exercise to do in your own environment if you can pick out the purposeful and the all students. And sometimes, and a recent study also showed that, students have different points of departure, different mindsets, which also explains why some of them go abroad and others don't. But we should also think about the sort of students that we would want to include in this. In the Netherlands, being the first generation in higher education is the best predictor for not studying abroad. And being the first generation of your family in higher education will therefore also include our participants in internationalization at home within our own institution. So we should make sure that we include those students as well. So this is a picture that sort of symbolizes the change from activity-based internationalization to outcomes-oriented. So what we should do now is make sure that there is actually a door at the top before we start building stairs. And so let's start with the outcomes. So if we talk about the curriculum, and the definition says the formal and the informal curriculum, we also have the hidden curriculum. And the hidden curriculum are all those assumptions and traditions that we grew up with and that are so familiar to us that we don't see them anymore, but they are there. And they can be about the way we teach, the way we behave in the classroom, the way we expect students to work independently, the culture of grading. And let me give you one example. The Netherlands is a Calvinist country. We have a scale of 1 to 10, but the 9 and the 10 we never award to students because we're Calvinistic, and 8 is high enough. But we don't explain that. So that means that that hidden curriculum is there, we don't see it. And I think the reason why we internationalize is to bring in perspectives, other perspectives from other disciplines, because we know that the effects of interdisciplinary work can be quite similar to the effects of getting perspectives from other countries or other cultures. So the interdisciplinary work is definitely part of internationalization at home and can strengthen it. So we've called that pluriform perspectives. Also asking ourselves whether we are not overlooking perspectives. And so if you look at the reading list, is that only Western? Is it only American? And if we remove that literature, is there anything left? So trying to imagine which perspectives there could exist. And this is not an iceberg, but a plastic bag in the ocean. So meaning that there is also a relationship between the global and the local. And the plastic soup in the ocean starts with the plastic bag in the corner of the classroom. So that hidden curriculum is definitely an important aspect. What is also an important aspect, in addition to the geographical distribution, you saw the maps, is how disciplines work with internationalization at home. So this is a model that shows hard and soft disciplines and pure and applied disciplines. And we have done some research within our own university and others, and we indeed find these very different reactions. So if you look at the top left corner, quantum physics, those are people that consider knowledge universal. It's the same in Europe as it is in China. Whereas in the soft applied, people are much more inclined to discuss how mankind generated certain knowledge itself, how knowledge is man-made. And that means also that meaningful internationalization at home happens in departments and in programs. And it's not just a top-down element that is written up in the university policy and then it happens. No, you need to develop a meaningful international component quite differently from primary teacher education than you would do in engineering. So that is what one of the challenges is, bringing that bottom-up process to the fore and supporting it. So if we look at the Netherlands, 21% of our students in one way or another get on that plane. They've been called by a Norwegian researcher the cultural elite because they have the mindset and the parents that go with it to grab the opportunity to study abroad. And that means that 79% is not getting on that plane but stays on the bike down below. And by the way, what is contradictory is that we were trying to get students out of planes, but we've also been trying for 30 years to get them on planes, but we've not been very successful. So in Dutch policy, but also in Swedish and others, the minority that crosses that border is still the norm, and we present internationalization home as an alternative. And I would like to flip that around and say we have an internationalized curriculum for 100% of our students. And if some of them can go abroad, that is fine, but it is additional. And it is not only for those who can't go. So that is, I think, a shift in our thinking. What also plays a role in the Netherlands is that we consider internationalization a continuum, which starts in primary education, where pupils will have their first intercultural experiences, secondary education, where a lot of internationalization is going on, school exchange projects, online collaboration, but still we pretend that internationalization is something for higher education, and we disregard all the experiences that students had before. So I think we should pay more attention to that. So some of the sub-tools for internationalization at home, I consider internationalization at home a tool towards means, and the means or the aim is the development of student competences, and internationalization is not an aim in itself. So these are some sub-tools, comparison of cases from different contexts, and you may notice I'm not using the word international here because there is not one international view. It is the plurality of perspectives and context. Literature, online collaboration, engagement with local diversity, comparative research, local and foreign guest lecturers, and if you have them, it's not per se necessary for internationalization at home. Incoming students, of course, that generates opportunities, but you can have the perspectives in other ways as well. So not just from incoming students. And I think you will see that everyone has parts of this already. Sometimes it is implicit, and you have to make it explicit, but none of it benefits from the international office that was also always solely associated with internationalization. To academics departments. This is teaching, this is implementing the academics. Students can view students who've been on internships. There is to bring those stages through activities. Just electives. Some newer misconceptions that we saw increasing during the pandemic. Internationalization at home is a good alternative for those poor students who are not in the opportunity to travel. And we've already seen that we should start with the internationalized curriculum. Internationalization at home is inclusive by default. I think looking at the hidden curriculum, there are mechanisms there that may exclude students. So we should be very careful not to assume that because we do it in our own institution, it is inclusive for all students. And one that we see also frequently, that online international learning is the same as internationalization at home. It is in fact only one element. And there is sometimes a tendency to develop an online module, an international module, and then check the box when it's over, and then internationalization is taken care of, where you should really use the entire curriculum to develop students' international skills. So this is where I would like to end. The challenges we have is still overcoming those misconceptions and the terminological confusion. So I hope that we can actually abolish the word internationalization and replace it by something else. A challenge is to create a curriculum design culture for internationalization, meaning that we involve educational developers, define the outcomes first, and then the activities, and that we align this along an entire curriculum. Creating interdisciplinary learning experience, because that supports the effects of internationalization and other perspectives. And you can do that both within your own university, with other universities, and online. And then when you have those virtual exchange or COIL activities, align them with all the other things you can do for internationalization across the entire curriculum. And this also means that you should not wait with an online activity, international activity, until the students are in year 3 of their program. And so why not do that much earlier to set the tone? So yeah, these are challenges that will remain, but we are working on them. And of course, as we do in internationalization, we have patience, we are hopeful, but we try to move things at the same time. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really have a lot of questions, but I'd like to give the floor to, if we may, for another 5 minutes to the audience to ask a question or two to you, because it's such a rare opportunity to learn from the source. So I'm wondering if any of our partners in Bhutan in the audience would like to ask a question, or also anyone from the virtual audience, virtual community attending the conference. A question for Professor Verlaine is there? I'm sure there are plenty, but not everybody is. Okay, Maria from Princess Songkla in Thailand.
Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. Thank you, Christina. And I will have a question. Yes, nowadays we hear a lot about IAH is a good alternative when students cannot travel. And Professor Verlaine just said that it's a new misconception. I would like to have a little bit of explanation why cannot be replaced, and how can we do more to have a replacement, because when we cannot travel, what can we do?
Well, thank you for your question. Now, what I noticed during the pandemic is that people say the situation has completely changed. No students, 0% of the students can go abroad. But in fact, before the pandemic, it was also maybe 5% along the line. And so in some disciplines, it was very high. In others, it was almost non-existent. And then we saw, and I'll give you one example from the UK. They said, we now have to practice internationalization at home. Oh, you should have done that 20 years ago. But they collected some online electives, called them internationalization at home, and then said global citizenship without travel. And the word global citizenship was only in the title. So I think we have to be careful that we are not using terms without meaning, and that we are critical, and not say that this is an alternative. No, it has always been the needs of nearly all students that they have the home curriculum for their international perspectives. And I think that's not changed very much through the pandemic. So I think looking for any perspective that you can find in other disciplines in your own university is a really good start. And then work online, work with cultural diversity. So it is in many small pieces. There is not one big solution that fixes it all.
Thank you very much. Yes, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering if we have a question from the audience in Bhutan.
We have a question here.
College.
We have a question here.
Christina, we have a question.
Go ahead, Leki. Hi.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I think this is a new topic for me. And it was very interesting actually to know about the challenges and the misconceptions. And amongst the misconceptions that you have mentioned is about the understanding that people have. And you said the word probably the internationalization must be changed. So I was wondering, what would you propose to change or as a replacement for that word.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping that in your conference you can come up with a really good alternative, but you're not the first ones who try. So what we have put in as another term, but it maybe doesn't make it better, is the Pluriform Perspectives. And I've come up with that term together with my colleague who is Professor of Inclusive Education. And she is mostly looking at which voices and which perspectives do we not hear. And so it is a hidden curriculum thing that we find some knowledge more important than others. So, for example, we in Europe tend to find Western knowledge more important than Asian knowledge, maybe. So she is always exploring which voices, which perspectives are excluded. So we came up for internal discussions purpose with the term Pluriform Perspectives. But it's not going to replace internationalization across the world. But academics seem to be able to work with it. So maybe you can experiment with it in your own environment and see how it goes.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think with that understanding of your understanding, I think the idea that I have to see probably I can also start thinking about it. And the bulk is growing a little bit, so probably that we can think over a period of time. And yeah. Thank you so much.
See how it goes. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Professor Belén, would you allow one last question from the Philippines?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you. Michelle from St. Louis University in Baguio City in the Philippines.
Yeah. Should we only see internationalization at home in a positive light? Should there be any cost involved on the part of the students whom we have enlightened, and yet they may remain to be immobile in our country? So is there any cost also for internationalization at home in terms of the mindset of our students? Or should it always be positively seen as auguring well for our students' skill set or mindset or knowledge about the world?
Thank you for pointing that out. There is indeed some backlash against internationalization at home, which is rather vocal from South Africa, where people say, well, internationalization is an imposed imperialistic concept, and internationalization at home is too. And I think that is not quite justified. Because internationalization at home is also about local and indigenous knowledge. So even for us in the Netherlands, we are next door to the UK. The UK dominant model or Anglophone dominant model of internationalization does not work for us. So I think if you implement internationalization at home well, you have global perspectives, you may have national perspectives, but you also have local perspectives and indigenous knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I think we should then reassess internationalization at home and see if we are then still critical of it. So yeah, again here, we have to be critical about our own organization, but I think if we ensure that indigenous and local aspects are there, it becomes a different story, and the benefits of internationalization then also become local benefits.
Okay, thank you very much for that perspective. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of the consortium, on behalf of our audience in Bhutan attending this event face-to-face and following this online. Thank you so much for your time. We really cannot thank you enough, and we're looking forward to seeing how these challenges are actually evolving and resolving, hopefully. And in my next couple of slides, I just want to brief the audience about the project in general. And if I may share my screen, you would automatically see why I told in the beginning that it all started with your definition of the concept of internationalization at home. 1 second. So I'm going to take the floor for about 5 or 10 minutes to just make an introduction to the project, because after that we're going to split in 2 breakout sessions and talk about the Friends project, concrete achievements and results on the one hand, and on the other hand, in the second parallel session, we're going to talk about general trends in internationalization and globalization in higher education. So back to the Friends project for an instant, just to remind everyone and to introduce those who are new to the project, to the fact that this is a network of 16 higher education institutions. There are 5 Asian countries represented in this project: Bhutan, Cambodia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. On the Europe side, on the European side, we have Varna University of Management as project coordinating institution in Bulgaria. Also, I share and her institution and Istanbul University in Turkey. We have a partner institution from Poland, Silesian University of Technology, and also Budapest Metropolitan University. You can see on this slide, you can see basically the definition I was referring to earlier, and this is literally these 2 statements are those on the basis of which the whole project idea was developed back in 2017, late 2017. I felt the need to highlight and to display the project objective on this slide as a proof of the fact that indeed we took St. John's definition from 2015 and we tried to implement it in the small scope of our project. We all know that it's impossible to sort of solve the world or higher education institutions or challenges and problems to one particular project. So what we did is basically we decided to focus or to pick and focus on 2 examples, 2 avenues, potential cooperation avenues of integration of intercultural dimensions. On the one hand, in the formal, on the other hand, of the informal curriculum. So we basically took this definition and on the one hand, developed the intercultural passport virtual module that is feeding into the integration of intercultural knowledge and dimensions in the formal curriculum. So this module was developed by European partners in general in the project. It consists of 2 components. On the one hand, we have the massive online open course, which is available on our website. It's entitled Intercultural Awareness and Cultural Diversity. The project feasibility study phase, we sort of realized that almost none of the partner institutions in Asia have a subject focusing on building intercultural competence. So we decided to design and develop one and to make it accessible through the means of MOOC, the massive online open courses. Our virtual module consists of 2 components. So in other words, for students across the 5 Asian countries to complete this module, they would need on the one hand to complete the massive online open course I mentioned, but also on the other hand, they need to submit a digital story that reflects a experience of theirs in dealing with situation when they faced intercultural or intercultural challenges or had to deal with situations abroad. So basically, every picture, impression, thought, experience student might have had in an international or intercultural interaction was eligible to be presented through a digital story. Students, I have to say, this is the digital storytelling component of the project has been one of the most inspiring, not only because the students' creativity is endless, but also they really put a lot of efforts and energy to create those stories. So basically everybody in the consortium group, all students who submitted the digital story at institutional level and also completed the MOOC, they received the Intercultural Passport certificate. We like to believe, we always mention this metaphor that this Intercultural Passport is basically corresponds to the international passports students need when they cross political borders. The Intercultural Passport is supposed to help them crossing cultural borders. Of course, learning outcomes achieved are tangible, quantifiable. They equal for ECTS, and at the project exploitation phase, we've realized that each and every of the 12 partner institutions in Asia is actually exploiting and implementing and integrating this content developed in the FRIENDS project in a different manner, by recognizing students' learning outcomes and results achieved in it. Here are some statistics as of late September 2022. You can see we have a large number of completers, the massive online open course. The biggest part of this huge figure of over 17,000 goes to SLU, but nevertheless, there has been a lot of exploitation across the other 11 institutions in the project. You can see that we already have more than 2,300 digital stories created. Those are available on our YouTube channel. And we even had in the past a film festival, an online film festival with students' digital stories. Now that I've covered very briefly our efforts and the project activities linked to or aimed at integrating intercultural dimensions into the formal curriculum, I'd like to sort of draw your attention to our efforts linked to making a difference and making a difference for the students and for the universities in general by introducing intercultural dimensions into the informal curriculum. So we've created 12 Friends Tea Houses across the 12 universities involved in Asia. Each of these Friends Tea Houses is actually operating as a multicultural hub, social hubs, student a place for students, and it also represents, the Friends Tea House in each and every partner university is a sort of extension to the international office. We know international offices are very often very, very bureaucratic administrative places dealing with administrative bureaucratic problems, and we wanted to animate not only the international offices of these institutions of our partner universities in Asia, but also to sort of contribute to the overall student experience, the extracurricular life and student experience on campus across the universities involved. Some of the achievements of the Friends Tea Houses, of these newly established units, as you can see, each and every of the universities had to arrange and organize a piloting intercultural festival that is becoming or has become an annual thing. In the piloting session, on the piloting stage, we had over 7,000 attendees across the 12 universities involved, online, offline. Our project implementation coincided with the pandemic, so we took huge benefit of online communication in it. As you can see, also we had opportunities provide blended mobility as well in the framework of the student boot camp. So basically, successful completers and owners of the Intercultural Passport who were appointed and selected and signed by their home institutions in Asia took part in a student boot camp this summer in Bulgaria in 2022. And finally, we've been very active, partners in Asia have been very active in promoting project results outside the consortium as well. On a national level, for this purpose, we had numerous Friends caravans organized and conducted involving universities outside in Bhutan, Cambodia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand, outside the consortium. So we've managed to reach out to more than 2,000 attendees of these events, and all of them hopefully nowadays are aware both the Intercultural Passport virtual module, but also the Friends Tea Houses operation. and activities. On national level, we've organized 5 national conferences targeted primarily at higher education practitioners, colleagues, peers of ours. We also collaborated with another key stakeholder group that are the employers. And in the framework of these local markets for global talents, career fairs organized across the universities in the project, we've managed to reach out to more than 400 employers, more than 4,000 students attending these events, again online, offline. And finally, it was also mentioned in the framework of Professor Belen's presentation, and in particular the slide what internationalization at home is all about. It was mentioned that it's also about engagement with local diversity and local communities. We actually have taken this aspect very seriously, and towards the end of the project have been working very hard on developing the so-called community development plans. Each of the 12 universities in the project has selected one local minority, cultural, ethnic, religious minority, and they've been collaborating with them. They actually created their mini friends project with that particular community to engage with youth, with pupils, with students, and from these communities, but also with representatives of indigenous peoples in the Philippines, in Thailand, etc. So these final 2 slides, I've taken the liberty to highlight these communities. This is an activity to end shortly, along with the project end in mid-November, and our community development plans, along with reporting and evidence of the activities partners have undertaken with these communities, will be published on our website. So please follow us through our website, online through Facebook. Finally, I'd like to mention very shortly some figures concerning Friends' impact. Project impact needs to be quantifiable and quantified. So as you can see here, based on surveys conducted in the project, over 80% of the students engaged confirmed they acquired new knowledge and skills in the field of cross-cultural studies. They claim to be more confident in interaction with other cultures after having been part of this project. They also claim to be more interested and motivated to take mobility abroad. International outbound mobility is a serious problem in most of the Asian countries. Universities represented here. Figures are really low, way below European statistics. 5 to 10%, depending on the institution. And finally, as you can see, we like to believe that we've contributed also to students' employability by developing their global skills and sort of making them, or having made them more interested in a career, whether abroad or an international company, or in a multicultural environment. We mentioned earlier today the priorities to the Erasmus Plus program for a more inclusive, digital, green higher education, and this project has made a very little step towards the achievement of these priorities across the universities involved as well. I know we're running out of time. I'd like to thank everyone for your time and attention during this first plenary session. We're going to split now. We're going to have a 10-minute break, and after that, return to the 2 breakout sessions, like I mentioned earlier. Once again, our sincere thanks to our keynote speakers, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone in the sessions start in 10 minutes and also tomorrow. Thank you for your time, and see you soon again. Both here on this link and in the parallel session dedicated to Friends projects, results and achievements. There you would hear more from partners in Asia in particular on the results achieved and the difference made and the impact achieved at the institutional level and national levels as well. Thank you, and see you soon again in 10 minutes. Thanks a lot.